Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, honorable members. Welcome to the meeting. The time is now 8 o'clock. Our meeting is scheduled for 8. We have at least 5 members, and therefore we meet the threshold to start our meeting. And I will not waste any time given the tightness of the day. This is a meeting of the Portfolio Committee on Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation. And today we are having an agenda where we need to hear a presentation, the introduction of the bill on Stats SA. Noma Kosa, are there any apologies?
Good morning, Chairperson. Yes, I've received 2 apologies. One from the minister in the presidency, is out of the country on official business. And the other one is from Honorable Magloa. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. The agenda would have been sent to you. So as I indicated, we have got that one item. Again, let me welcome all of you members in the meeting, our support staff, and the public, if there's any of them who have joined us on the YouTube and other platforms. I also want to welcome the ministry. I'm told that the Deputy Minister will lead the delegation. So I want to welcome the Deputy Minister to our meeting. And I would not, I can see, let's see, Honorable Manye, it seems you are struggling. Let's hope you will get it right. Thank you.
I'm covered, Chair. I'm covered, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. Honorable Deputy Minister, I'm going to shoot straight to you and your team to present to us who have received the bill, who have received the presentation, for you to lead your team, introduce the team that is going to make the presentation.
Recording in progress.
And therefore, for us to start hearing the key issue want to hear is what is the objective of this bill, and then you take us through on the few issues in the bill. Over to you, Honorable Deputy Minister Morolong.
Well, thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me convey our greetings to the Portfolio Committee. Let me also convey our appreciations on this occasion. You would know that this is our first appearance before this Portfolio Committee. Let me express the fact that we look forward to our mutual cooperation in the execution of our responsibility, both as the executive and your role, which is quite critical of oversight. It is really our singular honor, Chair, to introduce the statistic amendment bill. Let me also indicate that we have in our midst the team of Statistics South Africa, which is led by the head of Statistics South Africa, Mr. Risenga Maluleke. Chair, the current configuration in the Statistics Act number 6 of 1999 comprises the Minister, the Statistician General, and the Statistics Council. To just give us a snapshot of the responsibilities of the key role players, the Minister approves the work program of Stats SA on advice of the Statistician General and Statistics Council. The Minister also manages performance of the Statistician General and appoints the Statistics Council. The SG executes the Statistics Act, exercises and ensures independence, defends statistical methods and best practice. The Statistics Council safeguards official statistics, advises both Minister and the Statistician General, and the Council is independent from Stats SA. Stats SA started with this legislative reform process in 2014. We are finally at a point to present the outcome of this process. The Statistics Amendment Bill seeks to amend Statistics Act 6 of 1999 with the main emphasis on strengthening statistical coordination in the country. Statistics South Africa has followed all required processes in drafting the Statistics Amendment Bill, which include the socio-economic assessment system process, working with the Office of the Chief State Law Advisor, consulting the information regulator to ensure that the Statistics Amendment Bill is not in contravention of the POPI Act, and engaging key stakeholders. We received approval from Cabinet in October 2022 to table the amendment bill. The real purpose of today's meeting is to present on the process followed and to outline a summary of the process of the proposed legislative changes in the bill. The presentation will also explain that the key role players I outlined in my introduction remain the same, with the same responsibility, and that the bill does not introduce any new body to administer the act. That the key emphasis of the bill is to strengthen coordination of the national statistical system. The Statistician General, in his presentation, Chair, will give an update of how far we are in getting the bill processed by Parliament. So with your permission, Chair, I would like to call on the Statistician General to introduce the Statistics Amendment Bill.
Thank you, Deputy Minister Morolong, for those introductory remarks and to just take us on board. Thank you very much. Well appreciated. SG Maluleke, you are now invited to present. We have, as I indicated, received and is taken as read. And because this is our first, so that as part of orientation to itself, you will be given between 20 and 30 minutes to take us through. And I hope that will suffice. I come from a school that says if you can't get your idea across in 15 minutes, then that idea is not worth presenting. Over to you.
Thank you indeed.
20 and 30 minutes this time around. Thank you.
Thank you indeed, Chairperson. And let me greet all members, honorable members of the Portfolio Committee. And furthermore, let me indicate that the Statistician General is accompanied by DDGs from different branches of Stats SA, as well as the head of strategy. In this regard, Chairperson, as Chair has indicated, and Deputy Minister has already indicated that this process has been ongoing. I've asked Celia de Klerk to share the slides, and I guess she will be assisting us on making sure that they show on the one side. Yeah. This presentation, Chairperson, will start with the background and will explain the consultations that we have done, the comparative schedule of and study tours, as well as issues that have to do with the socio-economic impact assessment, which is a system that is put in place for the state, and Office of the Chief State Law Advisor process, key amendments to the Stats Act, the impact of the revised Stats Act on the statistics system, and update on the bill, Statistics Amendment Bill. Chair, there is a slide that we have included right towards the end, which has to do with what has been sustaining as late as yesterday. But let us start with the background. What has happened is that we, as Stats SA, together with the Statistics Council, identified weaknesses in the current Statistics Act, particularly in relation to the coordination, as Deputy Minister has indicated. A symposium in 2014 was held, And of course, there were 5 focal areas underpinning the discussions, and I will come to those. But particularly, the participants were from national departments, provincial departments, offices of premiers in different provinces, researchers, international partners coming from different countries all over the world, as well as the United Nations Statistics Division. Why was it necessary to have the United Nations Statistics Division? It's because the law that we use, the Statistics Act, has to uphold to United Nations fundamental principles on official statistics, and indeed also on the African Charter on Statistics. Chairperson, in terms of legislative reform, as of December 2014, Cabinet provided or gave approval to Statistics South Africa to conduct stakeholder consultations in preparation for the amendment of the Statistics Act. And of course, going further, these consultations were between organs of state and other relevant organs necessary to facilitate the development of the series of data that we collect, and of course, that is needed for monitoring of the National Development Plan at the national level, Agenda 2063 at an African level, and SDGs at a level of the globe, that is at the UN level. Having said so, as our Deputy Minister has indicated, and as I've indicated, that the thrust of the whole process had to do with the coordination process that is in the middle, in the color orange. And indeed, at national and provincial summits, legislative reform was discussed, but other issues came out: statistical geography, institutional arrangements and protocols, and of course, a statewide statistical service and data revolution. And why did these issues have to come out? Is because when you talk about coordination, you need to deal with matters of institutional arrangements. You have to look at the way you look at the geopositioning of your statistics at the level of collection and reporting. And of course, there has to be support provided to elements of the statistics unit in the form of a statewide statistical service. And of course, this brings in new areas of statistics, be it artificial intelligence, deep learning, machine learning in the form of data revolution. And all these issues had to do with the work that we're talking about of coordination at the center. Now, the comparative schedule indicated that in terms of the laws, and the Stats Act was showing conflicts with 22 other acts, which included, amongst others, Deeds Act, Tax Administration, Educators Act, and it indicated that 8 of them didn't have conflict. But the way we dealt with these matters in consultations with organs of the state, as well as with the state law advisors, was that wherever it has to do and whenever it has to do with matters statistics, the Statistics Act would take would prevail, would take precedence, in as much as when it has to do with matters of the tax law takes precedence. Having said so, we underwent comparative studies at an international level, as well as study tours. We engaged Statistics Namibia, Uganda, Mexico, United Kingdom, France, and the Philippines. And of course, the study tours were undertaken in Mexico, the UK, France, and the Philippines. And in the process, this was looking at their statistics system rather than looking at their law that relates to their own statistics office. And of course, furthermore, we had to look at the socio-economic impact assessment system, which started in 2018 and was finalized in 2020. And this, we went further to consult the cluster of DGs on governance, state capacity, and institutional development. And of course, the DGs supported the amendment and gave approval for StatsSA to take it to the next level. And we received a socio-economic impact assessment system sign off to present the legislative changes to cabinet. And a ministerial cluster on governance, state capacity and institutional development did receive the presentation on the and on the 11th of September 2020, it actually gave us a go ahead, but with the following proviso, that we had to consult the information regulator on the protection of personal information as the POPIA was coming into being. That meant that we had to go back and restart the process, Chairperson, because when you bring in new aspects, you have to go back and start all over again. Furthermore, 2020-2022, StatsSA consulted the information regulator on the Statistics Amendment Bill and received comments which in the main were saying that StatsSA is in compliance with the POPIA and no changes were made to the amendment bill. And this I need to say, Chair, that all along, even the POPIA came into being. StatsSA upholds the whole issue of protection of information of persons and institutions or entities that we collect information in, that we have a one-way direction. Information that comes to StatsSA, whether it comes from SARS, it comes from households, whether it comes from entities, business entities, it's never shared with anybody. The only time it could be shared is when there's a court order to do so, compelling the Statistician General, including when there could be a criminal investigation with a directive as such, with a court order. Having said so, StatsSA, having worked with the information regulator, continued to go back to the ministerial cluster on governance, state capacity, and institutional development. And again, the ministerial cluster gave approval that it must, the amendment bill must go back to cabinet. And of course, it was tabled again in cabinet. Having said so, Chairperson, we want to talk about the proposed amendments of the Statistics Act that were sent to the State Law Advisor between 2018 and 2020. Amongst others, the proposed amendments to the Statistics Act were sent to the Chief State Law Advisor. And of course, they also provided the legal opinion that they are satisfied with the work that we are doing, and it's in line with the Constitution, and it is not in contravention of any other legislation. As such, Chairperson, this process was given a thumbs up to go to the next level. And I want us to come to the key amendments that we are talking about here. Of course, this process included deleting, substituting, and inserting new definitions, amongst other issues. It has always been subsumed based on international best practice that the Statistician General is the Statistician General of the country, of the Republic of South Africa. Of course, the Statistician General is the head of StatsSA, but in the current act, it says the law provides for the Statistician General as it provides for the Statistician General and head of StatsSA, but it's not explicit in saying that the Statistician General is for the country, and that was regularized and included. Furthermore, the current act says we must conduct a census every 5 years. And we all know, Chairperson, that censuses were conducted only in 1996 and 2001, following the 5-year cycle. After 2001, it was realized that it's too heavy, one, on the fiscus of the country, in that a census at the stage is costing us about 3 billion. That to have to put around 3 billion every 5 years would be heavy on the fiscus. But the census also absorbs the entire organization called StatsSA, and the other products do suffer. So it was agreed way back prior to 2001 that the census must come on 10-yearly cycles. So what has happened is that it means that all along, until this amendment bill is changed, State SA has been in contravention of the Act because we could not conduct a census every 5 years because the fiscals didn't have money to give us to do so. And as such, we are regularizing this to 10 years. And of course, to make provisions for the development and implementation of a national statistics system in such that we should have a national strategy for the development of statistics. The current arrangement is that we have a strategy for State SA, not for the entire development of statistics. And of course, in the process, to ensure that we strengthen coordination and collaboration. And as we do so, all products must meet quality in that they must go through the South African quality, statistical quality assessment framework, as well as making sure that data, official statistics from organs of state and trading entities and other producers should come at no cost. At the stage is that when State SA has to access data, especially from the private sector, who are also producers, we have to pay. And that is becoming quite costly. As we know, the price of data is becoming a lot more costly. And to make provisions for the establishment of statistical units or statistics units in organs of the state. And such units should submit annual statistical plans as well as annual statistical reports. And of course, to make sure that we have a clearinghouse that sits at State SA for the national system of statistics, and to empower the minister responsible for statistics to make regulations. As we know that in the country, because of the independent function of statistics, South Africa, there is no, the Act doesn't refer to the minister for statistics. As State SA from time to time has been moved from the time we were in Home Affairs, in the RDP office in the new government, we were moved to the Ministry of Finance, we went back to the Department of Planning, and we went back to the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation. We ended up in the presidency as of now. Having said so, Chairperson, what is the impact of the revised Statistics Act? One is that it retains the current configuration in that it provides for functions and responsibilities for the minister, for the Statistician General and the Statistics Council. I need to say, as Deputy Minister has indicated, Chair, that the Statistics Council doesn't operate like a board that supervises the work of the Statistician General. It is an advisory council that advises both the minister and the Statistician General. And as such, from time to time when we submit our annual report, the Statistics Council Chair does provide their report on pieces of advice they have given to the Statistician General and whether those pieces of advice have been accepted and not accepted for reasons that the Statistician General may explain, and Council and the Statistician General do concur, but they have to make those issues public. Of course, it doesn't introduce a new body, Chairperson. And of course, it is drafted in such a way that it serves to strengthen the coordination needs of the national statistics system, not of State SA. The national statistics system is far beyond State SA. As we know that State SA alone cannot produce the data that the country requires. I can give a good example. The South African Police Services produces crime statistics, which the Statistician General has given the right as official statistics and delegated rights for them to produce. Chairperson, let's go further in the next slide and look at the updates. And the updates are that as of October 2022, Cabinet approved that the Statistics Amendment Bill be submitted to Parliament for further processing. The Statistics Amendment Bill was submitted to Parliament by the Minister in the Presidency in May 2023, and the bill is awaiting processing by Parliament. Of course, there were a few matters that needed to be attended before the amendment bill is processed, and that needed to be considered by Parliament. In the next slide, Chairperson, as Chairperson has directed me that I must keep this within 20 to 30 minutes, I can promise that I will conclude. And as I head towards conclusion, the Statistics Amendment Bill is in compliance with Joint Rule 159. That is, the minister submits the draft bill to the presiding officer after cabinet's approval. And of course, furthermore, it's in compliance with the National Assembly Rule 279.2, and that it was certified by the state law advisor as late as yesterday, as I was indicating, that regardless of what they had previously given us, as late as yesterday, they gave us a signed off statement or a certificate that indicates that they are satisfied. And I must admit, this has been iterations, because every now and then we were told to go back for further consultations. The state law advisors had to tell us that we are in compliance, and this time they had to come back as late as yesterday. It is in compliance with the National Assembly Rule 276 that we are currently working with the Office of the Chief State Law Advisors going forward. And we have, furthermore, Chairperson, let me indicate that on introduction, the bill will then go forward and be referred to the ATC. In the next slide, Chairperson, the next slide says Ndihela Kwala, but I need to explain this slide, Chairperson. I need to explain this slide in that, as it says that Ndihela Kwala, meaning that I'm about to finish. This slide, Chairperson, has a history. The history is that when I was growing up in the village, our mothers and fathers could not read and write. Our fathers were migrant workers in urban centers. So every now and then, Chairperson, we had to write a letter on behalf of our mothers. They could not end a letter with, "I love you, my husband," or "I miss you," because those words, Chairperson and honorable members, were not supposed to be heard by kids or children who were the scribes. The children were going to go deaf, according to village legend, Chairperson. And if the children wrote those according to village legend, they were going to go blind. So mothers and fathers had to find a way to mitigate for that in the midst of their children being their scribes. It was a standard way amongst the Batsonga people to say Ndihela Kwala. Amongst the people that speak isiXhosa, they would always say Ngomkhulu Mbuliso. They would always say Ngiceda khona apha Ngomkhulu Mbuliso. In Sesotho sa Borwa, they would say Katitumediso na watsena. Kasitswana, they would say that Kifetsa hona fa. And they would end there. And Kasipedi, they would say Kifetsa hona mo. In Shivenda, they would say Ndifelela hanev. Yet in other languages, in English and Afrikaans, they would say, "I love you, I miss you, ek lief vir jou." And Chairperson, never and never again, as President Mandela once said, should we allow a section of our society, be it men, women, be it migrant workers, that they could never express themselves fully, even on issues that matter the most to their hearts, like love. That when we have numbers and we have statistics, and you yourselves, honorable members, as in charge of our laws, that we should allow sections of our society, by not using the numbers, to allow everyone to feel free to express themselves. So, Chairperson, in English and Afrikaans, Ndihela Kwala means that I finish here, finish and clear. The next slide, Chairperson, is blank. I thank you.
Thank you, Stats General Resenga Maluleka. You have just reminded me there, I was tested in writing those letters, because after going to school, if you are good, they say you must first write a letter. So I remember those letters. The appel up on Kolumbolis. You've provided a proper historical background to it. Thank you very much, and I hope everybody else, even the generation that came after us, would understand that. Thank you, SG, for that presentation. You have taken with that explanation exactly 20 minutes. That's appreciated. I had given you 30 minutes to do that. Thank you. Honorable members, there is the explanation about the object of the bill, its background given, the areas of amendment, and some history in its journey that has been explained, and what these amendments, what effect they would give when enacted later on. I now invite you to make your own comments, questions, clarities, or any other form of contribution you want to make as we attend to this matter. I see the hand of Honorable Manyi. I will start with him, to be followed by Honorable Pillay, followed by Honorable Mbele, and Honorable Phiri. In that order, Honorable Manyi.
Thank you, Chairperson. I hope the light is not terrible here. Firstly, let me welcome the presentation and also welcome the Deputy Minister. I have met him in person, and also welcome the so might have bumped across him, but I don't think we've had coffee with the SG. But before I start, Chair, I just need to really congratulate the SG. I think he's been acting typically like a seasoned professional. I've seen him from a distance, and he has managed to walk the tightrope of being a pure bureaucrat and not a political bureaucrat and all of that. So I want to say to you, SG, congratulations. Continue to do that work and be exemplary as to people in a position, how they should conduct themselves. Well done on your side. Right. I just want to also just start, Chair, with a matter that the SG did not address it, because I will not get this opportunity. In the rest of the statistics work, when they categorize in their stats, the office does not use the normal categorization of races as used by the line departments. In particular, when it comes to the Black group, I noticed that Stats SA, if you go to Employment Equity Act, you go to broad-based BEE, Black is defined as Africans, Colored, and Indians. But Stats SA has got its own classification, and I'm nervous about that. I think what they do, they just say Blacks, and then they say Colored and Indians. And yet, there is no such a thing in the line functions of the departments that deal with this matter. So I'm not opening a debate here or anything. I'm just saying, I'm just requesting the Stats SA to please follow the line departments in terms of defining these categories so that we all talk about the same thing in government. So we can't have the one government department that does its own thing. So SG, please just line up there with the Employment Equity Act definition. So that was just a side issue. In terms of the amendments, I think generally I'm happy with everything else. I mean, I can see the issue there, maybe just to paraphrase, to try and align the nomenclature so that you don't say, you don't pretend that an accounting officer and a DG are two different things. So I can understand the alignment that we're trying to achieve there. I'm happy with that, and everything else. The only thing I'm unhappy about is just one thing only on your amendments is the 5 year to 10 years. And if I listen to your argument about that 5 to 10 years. Unless I missed it, the only part I've heard is the cost issue, the 3 billion cost issue or something. Now, yesterday, we had a discussion on a different platform on a different issue. The Minister of Electricity was making a case. The Minister of Electricity was making a case about...
Just a pause, Honorable Manyi, just a pause. Honorable Graham, just mute yourself, please.
I do apologize. It was an accident. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Go ahead, Honorable Manyi.
Okay, you're welcome, ma'am. Yeah, so the Electricity Minister was making an example, and I'm using this to draw a parallel. He was saying, much as everyone is complaining about the cost of diesel, which is about, call it 30 billion a month or something, he was saying, but if you think that is too expensive to spend 30 billion a month, the impact to the economy for not having electricity is 10 times more. So my worry is that what is the impact? I mean, a 5-year period of not knowing how many people you are dealing with, I think it's a big risk that don't expose us to. To sit there with 5 years and not know whether I've got 50 million or I've got 40 million, given the 5-year planning cycles of government, I think it will be a mission to plan. I mean, picture any government department that works on a 5-year, in fact, I think government departments work on 5-year strat plans. Now, if you have to do a 5-year strat plan, but we are working on figures that are 5 years off, imagine the mess that's going to happen in the hospitals, the mess that's going to happen in social development, because you just don't know how many people you have, all because the SG is trying to save 3 billion. So SG, I really think that I understand as an accounting officer, you're trying to do your Section 38, you're trying to be efficient, cost effective and all of that. But I think it's more like penny wise, pound foolish, the price that the country will pay to save that 3 billion that you're trying to save, I think is too much. So I would suggest that just abandon this that proposal, carry on with the 5-year thing. It's very important to always have up-to-date stats. We can't be 5 years out as you plan, as any department or as anyone. I think with that, Chair, that is my input. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Manyi. Honorable Pillay.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Let me greet all honorable members and all colleagues on the platform. I must apologize for my video just to increase the bandwidth. Thank you. Chair, let me also take this opportunity of noting the report, but also appreciating the presentation and the data that has been presented to us. I'm happy to have received this because it starts a process of us being able to finalize this bill. And with that, I just want to ask if we'll be able to complete this bill before this term of Parliament rises. I think it's very important. We've seen the delays, we've seen how long it has taken to get to this point, and I'm sure you will agree, Chair, that it cannot be this long for this bill to be finalized. So I'm hoping that we can move with a speed and be able to finalize this before Parliament rises. And I think we would have achieved great by doing so. In respect of the census, I think my only concern is around the report and the release of stats after a census is conducted. And my concern is that you find the release of the census report or results comes too close before the next census is about to start. And that doesn't help the country in planning, because remember, we ultimately rely on this data to be able to plan accordingly. For example, if you find that there are services lacking in provinces, that you're able to then improve on those services. And if we get this reports late, and it's happened, commonly, that you find the report comes just before a next census can start. I I'm also concerned about the last census, and perhaps just they could take us into confidence about how much of data was actually collected, because I know we had challenges around COVID and then we went through doing that. But also the introduction of new methods of conducting census. I know that they introduced electronic means of completing the census, and where they find that houses were not enumerated, the attempts to ensure that those houses were in fact enumerated. I understand that you may not get 100%, but with this kind of data, you have to achieve at least the maximum in terms of getting the data. Then just to take us, Chair, if you would, or the SG will take us through the map or roadmap in terms of the way forward, because I'm given to understand that once the committee deliberates, we then move into public hearings for the important public consultation. And we have to move with the speed of a mirage. I'm saying it again, so that we can be able to complete this. But holistically, I think it's important that we acknowledge the need for data, the need for research, the need for statistics, because it helps. And then in response to the 5-year versus the 10-year, have they studied other countries? What is the norms and standards in terms of census? Whether it is, I know that it may not be feasible, but does it help the country if you do 5 years or 10 years? And I think we've already passed that because it is moved to 10 years. It's not, I don't think it's an amendment now because that may have already been done. But just to see what are the norms and standards in respect of conducting that very important census. With that, Chair, thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Pillay, for your contributions. Appreciate it. Honorable Mbele.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning to the colleagues on the committee and the SG and his Stats SA team. Thank you for the presentation. I'm covered by Honorable Pillay in terms of the question and concern around the time frame for processing and finalizing this at this stage. So I'll just move on to my other question, which is to the SG. Firstly, it's just worthwhile saying that the work of Stats SA is greatly appreciated in terms of their professionalism and doing their best within various constraints. I know I've had some harsh words for Stats SA in the past, especially when it comes to shortcomings around the census, but the work that is up to standard does not go unnoticed. My question and concern is in terms of the context in which these amendments and the changes they introduce will operate in. We're all aware that we are just over a month away from the Finance Minister's MTBPS statements, which I think will not be good news all round. We're going to be seeing some baseline reductions in light of lower than expected tax revenue, etc. Especially if you look at the cost containment circular that came out from Treasury in the past week. So I just want to ask if the SG and the Stats SA team has given thought to the operational risks for these changes in the amendment bill, because we also know that Stats SA has struggled in the past with loss of skilled and experienced staff, as well as just financial constraints where, where various surveys have had to be put on the back burner because there weren't the means to carry those through. So if things are not going to be rosy on the resource side for the foreseeable future, how will that impact the changes to be brought in by the amendment bill? And have they given thoughts as to how they might mitigate those risks around, partnerships and seeking other other avenues of funding or resources. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mbele. Honorable Phiri.
Thank you, Chair. Morning to your good self. Good morning to colleagues and morning to the ministry and the delegation. Chair, allow me to switch off my video. As you can see, I'm on my way to Parliament. And don't mind my network. It must be a bit low, but I'll try by all means. Chair, let me join colleagues in appreciating the short and straight presentation, which will say it has been all awaited. We think it was supposed to have been in a different stage. As they've said when they were presenting, it was supposed to have been in the public participation. So I'll agree with Honorable Pillay. We need to move with the speed of a jet. And let me also go straight to my questions. But I want to make a highlight here, Chair, that all of us, the latter speakers, the three of them, they raised a concern in terms of the time frame, your 5 years versus 10. But mine, I want to coin it in this way. Currently, Chair, we are faced with artificial intelligence. Maybe the statisticians will tell us how are they going to conduct the issue of stats that will be accurate and assist the government to plan going forward. Let me put it in this way. In their systems or the system of government, are they synchronized in particular in terms of health? Because annually, daily, you get a newborn. And the previously, when I listened to the statistician in one of the forums, he was telling us in Limpopo, we have a high volume number of reproduction, meaning if we wait for 10 years, and with the numbers that he once articulated, that it's us who are reproducing from Limpopo, and you take 10 years without having a data of a new stats, it's a problem to budget and planning on its own. Therefore, maybe can link us and tell us how are they linking it with Home Affairs and the hospitals, clinics in particular, generally with health. But bearing in mind, there are those kids who are born, they don't have documentation. And we must not even forget the influx of migration. So maybe we must move with speed as government, as we are amending the bill. How are we going to then make it a proper and accurate for us to have a proper data? So I wanted to get clarity on that basis. As I move, Chair, what is the current reach of Stats SA in harvesting the digital data from various data resources and artificial intelligence implications, which may vary? And secondly, on meeting the national reporting obligations and recognizing the independence of the SG, what parameters exist for the minister in determining the statistical needs of the nation? Maybe lastly, Chair, what is more important again, for us to assist them and assist the bill to proceed, what are the resource requirements of this bill? Because if we could talk and not get what do we need and what is required for this bill to be realized, we'll be just doing something else that won't be realized. But we need to note that Stats SA already works with various state organs on the statistical matters. What is the current state of affairs on the capacity and the capability of the state organs. Let me stop there, Chair. Thank you. And Labakura Amilosha SG Reali Dumedisha Deputy Minister. Ke kgwedi ya bokgwa re go lena re a le lodge.
Thank you, Honorable Piri. We did hear you, even if you're addressing the SG. We got that. Thank you. Thank you, honorable members. Maybe what we'll do now, we'll ask Stats General Risenga Maluleka to give responses to those issues raised, and thereafter the DM would come in. Let me ask SG. I hope you have taken notes of the issues that were raised.
Thank you indeed, Chairperson. I have taken note of the issues. Let me start with the matter that Honorable Mani is raising in relation to your population group classification, Chair. In that, one, we will remember that way back in the early 90s, the population group was removed from the population register. So when you get your ID, there is nothing as in black, being colored, being African, being Indian. But during the census of 1996, we had consultations that we had to make. So before I come to that, so there's no longer a standard issue. And on a lighter note, I need to say that Honorable Mani used to be the Director General of Department of Labor. So he knows that what is being used from the side of the Department of Labor, it's not standard across government because that was removed. So, but on a serious note to address this matter, it's a very sensitive issue, Chairperson. It's very, very sensitive. I agree with Honorable Mani that black as in encompassing African, colored, and Indian. But when we consulted in Census 96, Census 2001, and Census 2011, as well as in Census 2022, a lot of things have been coming. One is that the Africans say that you can't just call us African alone. Why don't you call whites Europeans? And it's not our remit to answer that question. It's a national debate. The Africans say, we have always been called black. Why do you want to call us African? So we, in our classification for the Africans, we come with black African to accommodate those who are saying we want to be called black and those who want to say we are called African. Then on the Indian Asian population group, they are brought in together. On that one, Chairperson, we don't have much issues as in the white population group. In the colored population group, we have had more than 10 delegations in the last 24 months to Stats SA. And we know the sit-in that has been happening at the union buildings, where the Khoi and the San people say to us as Stats SA, don't classify anybody in South Africa, whether they are black, Indian, white, or anything. Don't classify them that. Everyone in South Africa is Khoi and San. Then there's another group that says everyone in South Africa, who you call colored, is Khoi and San. And the colored population group came in to say to us, but we have never lived the culture of the Khoi and the San people. So don't classify, you Stats SA, don't classify us your Khoi and San, classify us as colored. And then on a matter of collection, since 1996, we have used black African, colored, Indian, Asian, as well as white. If we change that, we will have a broken series in statistical collection. So the statistician general cannot readily break series like that, especially on was that a nationally sensitive matter like that, which I don't think is the remit of statisticians, we will just work with what the majority of the people in our consultations are saying. That is Black African as a population group, colored, Indian, Asian, as well as white. But for the Khoi and the San people, we created a space where they could classify themselves below that, where we say, if you are saying you want to classify yourself as not colored or any other population group, they can classify themselves. As the Portuguese came to see us, the Portuguese in South Africa came to see us and say, we like the white population group, but we also want to be classified as Portuguese. So we have allowed other for self-classification. Having said so, Chairperson, let me come to the issue of the 5 and 10-year issue of the data. We are already in practice. Even if we want to fall back to the 5-year cycle, Chairperson, we don't have the money. So if we ask for money and National Treasury doesn't give us the money, we will just not be able to run a census. And that has happened in the past. That's why we moved from 2001 to 2011. But what we have done as StatsSA, we have put an intercensal large-scale sample survey called the community survey. In 2006, we had what we call the community survey of 284,000 households. In 2016, 2017, we had one called, community survey again. So that name is already sustaining with 1.5 million households. With such a sample size, we are able to elevate to a national level. But I want to say that the census is not the only product of StatsSA check. We have about 250 to 270 products annually. And these products are used for planning. The GDP comes every 3 months. The CPI comes every month. The quarterly labor force survey and quarterly employment survey comes every 3 months. Manufacturing, electricity come every month. So we have these products. As regards the population, we also have what we call population media estimates that we release every year. So that will not fail us as regards planning. And I would want to request that in future, perhaps in the nearest future, Chairperson, if StatsSA could be invited not only on the bill or on our work program, but on the work of StatsSA and the products that the nation can benefit from. So we share with this portfolio committee, especially as a newly constituted portfolio committee. Now, let me come to Honorable Pillay. The question as to whether Parliament will complete this matter before Parliament rises. If you allow me, I don't defer to my seniors, Chair. I would rather defer this to yourself, Chairperson, because once it's introduced, the public participations are more parliamentary processes. And I would like to leave at that. There are concerns that were raised by Honorable Pillay. One is, as regards the census, the delays in releasing census results. Having spent almost 3 decades at StatsSA myself, I need to say that census 1996, we released the results in 1998. Census 2001, we released the results in 2003, 2 years later. Census 2011, we released the results in 2012, slightly above 12 months later. So the standard of processing census results internationally is about 2 years. And why is it 2 years? Is that after conducting a census, we need to know how many people we have counted more than once and how many people we have skipped. So we conduct what we call a post-enumeration survey, which takes a sample of the people that we reached out. And when we say a census, not only in a census, everything that the statistician general does, Chairperson, I'm responsible for everyone who finds themselves within the borders of our country. And I know sometimes I become unpopular because they say, do you count also illegal immigrants? I count everyone, Chairperson, because they use resources when they are in the country. They use, as we are talking now, they are using water, electricity, they are using ablution facilities. Imagine we were not counting them. Even President Trump, when he was in office, he wanted to know the number of illegal immigrants, particularly Mexicans. This almost stalled on the census of the United States, and it ended up saying the chief statistician of the US or any other country has to account for everyone within the borders. Having said so, it takes us 2 years to to finalize the census results. And one of the things is that it's not just counting people and saying this is the number. The post-enumeration survey will assist us in knowing what we call the undercount, how many people we have missed. You usually don't have an overcount, it's rare. You usually have an undercount. And that undercount is used for adjusting the population estimate to what it would have been for the national, for the whole country. And there are so many things you need to look at. You don't look at the count of people. You look at fertility, the number of children born, live births to a woman, mortality, you look at migration, you look at movements of people within the provinces. So Honorable Pillay is asking how much data was collected. I'm afraid, Chairperson, and this is no disrespect, it's done with all humility and all respect. I cannot talk about the numbers until I release them. There is no preside on the numbers, including holding parliament on on confidence. I can't even share the numbers with the president or the minister. The statistician general has to be independent at all times. So I will release the numbers on the 10th of October at 3 o'clock. That's when I'll answer this question of Honorable Pillay. Having said so, new methods that were used. Of course, we conducted the census during all tests of the census were done during the harshest level of lockdown. National Treasury was saying if we can't conduct a census in 2021, 2022, they were going to give us the money in 2032. So we would have had a 20-year lull. So we had to conduct the census during the tests were done during the harshest levels, actually at the highest level of the lockdown. We had to dismiss our training staff from St. George here in Pretoria because almost everyone was getting infected and it was becoming risky. So we had to introduce other methods, what we call computer-assisted personal interviews, where our field workers arrive with a gadget and can interview people and capture the information. We had computer-assisted telephone interviews where they can call people who have telephones and talk to them, and computer-assisted web interviews where people can capture their information. I must admit, Chairperson, that with web interviews and telephone interviews, there are limitations. As we all know that we have a digital divide in our country, as it is in most developing nations, that not everyone has a web, can go on the internet. Not everyone that has a telephone can be connected readily. And then some have 2 telephones. So when you look at Telkom, because you have to route them to a landline, if you use a cell phone, it's so difficult to use that and route it to a geography because you have to know where they are. And with connections of landlines in our country falling within that digital divide, it becomes challenging. The elderly, even if you talk to them on the phone, and not even the elderly, how many people don't file on e-filing in our country, including graduates? How many people drive on the road and it says you must drive at 120 kilometers per hour and they are caught driving at 160 or 200, even when the road signs are there? So the fact is that we were low on capturing the data that we got from web-assisted and telephone-assisted were low. We actually had a lot more challenges in the Western Cape particularly. That is why we went there and we stayed much longer. While we finished with the other provinces, we stayed much longer, Chairperson, in the Western Cape, but for a different reason. In the Western Cape, 64% of the population is in the city of Cape Town. The first thing that we experienced is that, and this is beyond us, this is what Parliament will need to deal with for the nation. The whites in the Western Cape, they didn't want to be enumerated by Black Africans and the coloreds. They sent them away. The white population group in the city of Cape Town could not, or in the Western Cape particularly, could not take up jobs with Stats SA to help us enumerate because they said we were paying very small for them. The colored population group was afraid to go to Nyanga, Khayelitsha, and everywhere to enumerate the Black Africans. The Black Africans were afraid to go to Mitchell's Plain. So we stayed much longer until May last year, Chairperson. And I must say, this matter goes beyond the remit of statisticians. It's a matter that needs to be addressed by the nation in terms of the population and race relations. Having said so, Chairperson, still, the PES post-enumeration survey has been completed. Council has been interacting with Stats SA to advise the Statistician General and to advise the Stats SA that on this matter of census, where are the limitations? And finally, Chairperson, Council will issue a statement to advise the nation on the veracity of the data. And the last Council meeting is about to take place on the 29th. And once that has happened, the Statistician General will continue releasing the numbers, and the limitations will on the data will be aired publicly. But the census data must stand the test of time, Chairperson. Once we release them, they must stand the test of time. Honorable Mbele, cost containment, and Honorable Mbele will remember we have been together in other committees on this matter of the effects of cost containment on Stats SA. There's a dictum, Chair, that you always cut your dress according to the size of your cloth. So based on what money we get as Stats SA, and we have failed to get money in the past, we could not conduct the poverty survey, income and expenditure survey to give us poverty for a long time. So cost containment, we have been alerted as Stats SA, like any other government department or organ of the state, that there will be cuts. And we will try and protect national indicators. So we'll release the GDP, we'll release the CPI, we'll release the quarterly labor force survey. But those statistics that we will not be able to produce because we don't have the money, we will come back and inform Parliament. Chairperson, I need to say that it's easy to approach other donors for funding, but South Africa is not classified as a least developed country. So we don't benefit from such donor agencies in terms of giving us money. We are an emerging economy, so we don't benefit, number one. Number two is that in cases where we have benefited in the past, the money comes with strings attached. When you are given donor funding, you are told what you must survey and conduct. And then you can't, as Statistician General, lose your independence. So we rather not have money, such money. We rather have money that comes from our state. Honorable Phiri, I've already spoken on the digital divide on artificial intelligence, indeed, but I will come a lot more. But there is data we are already getting. We get data from Home Affairs on the number of births. We can already say that the number of births are about 1.1 million per annum, recorded live births. But there are births, as Honorable Phiri has indicated, that are delayed in being registered at Home Affairs. Those are the ones that we pick up when we do our sample surveys. In the number of deaths, we already know around 2006, 2007, we used to have about 700,000 deaths, 660,000 deaths We are sitting now at about 542,000 deaths per annum, Chairperson. So we know this information from the Department of Home Affairs, but it's not enough. It's not enough in that as we have this bill coming in, we will have to not only collect from artificial intelligence, you have to have deep learning of capacity of ourselves, not only of Stats SA, in how much will capacitate other government departments and organs of the state. We have to have machine learning. Some of the computers that we have cannot actually capture data. They are used for capturing data, but they don't know how to intelligently decipher the data that we need. There's an issue of ethics. When we are abdicate to machines, Chairperson, machines do not have the abstract capacity to think. What are ethics? What if data lands in the wrong hands? People's data. What do we do with POPIA? So this matter goes beyond Stats SA. And of course, Honorable Phiri asks, Stats SA, do you have the resources to implement the bill? Usually, Chair, when we deal with the law, it's one part. That is why you usually don't attach the resources on any law or act or bill. Beyond that, then you look at your work program on what you can progressively introduce in implementing it. So far, what we can guarantee to a Parliament, Chairperson, is that we will protect the basic indicators, not ourselves alone, in the entire system of national statistics. But if resources are cut in the future, Chairperson, I must say that obviously we will fall within that remit. Chairperson, I suppose I've attempted to respond to all the questions that were raised. Thank you.
Thank you, SG. Maybe before I go to the DM, I'm just going to ask members just 1 minute follow-up. If you have got a follow-up, just for 1 minute to do that before we go to the DM, I'm going to give that opportunity from the response of the SG if there's a follow-up. Honorable Manyi.
Thank you, Chairperson. Firstly, perhaps I must just advise maybe the SG not to be overly defensive, as it were, because the responses that the comments that we give are well-founded comments, as it were. I mean, firstly, I must be very categorical that sitting where I'm sitting, I really reject the issue about Black African. Sitting here, I'm not actually a Black African, I'm just an African, not a Black African. In the nomenclature of government, there's no such a thing as a Black African. In South Africa, we've got what we call a constitutional democracy, rule of law. So the Statistician General has got no discretion to be calling us Black Africans, absolutely no discretion. He has got no legal authority to be doing this. It's not up to him to go around and come up with some anecdotal responses from people and then say, based on those anecdotal, therefore, I decide as SG to call you Black African. There's no such a thing. So my advice is that this is why I'm not using my own preference. I'm using what is provided for in the primary legislation that deals with these matters, that the SG must just line up. Because as we sit here and now, the Employment Equity Act, in terms of those definitions, has not changed. The Broad-Based BE Act, in terms of those, has not changed. So I reject very, very vehemently the response by the SG. Also, in government, you still have a Z83 form, has not changed. It still has Africans, colored, and Indians. So nothing has changed. It's only Stats SA that's doing its own thing. So, Chairperson, I really reject that. And also, I mean, why do you even want to say Black Africans and then leave whites and not say Black? Because even in Europe, you've got Black Europeans, you've got white Europeans, but here you just decide, all of those things. It's just, it's messy, Chairperson. It's unnecessary discussion. Can the SG please follow the primary legislation in the classification? It's really that simple. I'm not saying follow a Manyi preference. follow the law. The law is Employment Equity Act, it has defined it, and the BE Act has defined it. Stats SA has got no legal authority to be different. And maybe you must make a case, do some amendments or something, but it just can't be because you and your team think that with the consultations that you've made, therefore can make a call. I don't think you've got the legal authority to do that. It's almost like a chairperson as I close, that I have, imagine if some of these correctional services facilities, they say there's been a lot of people that are calling for death penalty. We think that there's sufficient people there for death penalty, and yet the law is clear that we don't have death penalty. So the explanation is totally unacceptable. And then also, Chair, on the issue of the funding, National Treasury is a fully fledged department. When it has got requirements to do something that is deemed necessary by the country, National Treasury sometimes they go around and they get departments to shave off 1% and all of that to make money available for certain important functions. I would argue here, Chair, that it's very short term. What's the right word? It's not prudent for the SG to insist on this 10-year thing. It's really not prudent. We cannot have a proper planning with figures that are 5 years out, 10 years out, and all of that. It's just not prudent. So I really want to insist that you must really just abandon this. Honorable Phiri, for instance, maybe she'll talk to this thing. I was waiting for the response about the harvesting of digital databases, because if the SG is concerned about saving money and all of that, if there are digital databases out there, maybe those can be harvested there. Maybe that could save money and all of that. Yeah. So, Chairperson, I think what did I leave out? Yeah, I think I've covered the issues. I think those are the issues for me, as I've summarized. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Manyi. Honorable Phiri.
Thanks, Chair. I think, the response that we got is that already they're practicing data collection of 10 years. So it just falls out of the discussions of my.
Honorable Phiri.
What disruption? Yeah, sorry, Chair.
Just tell the chief whip not to disrupt you. Go ahead, Honorable Phiri.
Chair, I was on the point that it means we don't have the luxury to change the time frame, but I thought the SG is going to elaborate further on how accurate the data that is collected will be assisting us in terms of planning, because it's important in terms of your stats for us to plan. So I think as much as he was responding, he needs to convince us. It is the correct word, to convince us or to put us into a comfort zone that really this system will be in a position to assist us, because currently, even when Pillay was giving his input, it tells you, it even delays the 5-year part. But then when we move to 10 years, it's going to go to the West. We acknowledge, we accept we are living in an artificial technology, or we call it an artificial intelligence, but Chair, it does not give us a way of being settled to deal with the term. But we are really noting that already they are practicing it. It means we feel it's not working at all. Secondly, Chair, on the basis that we, even on the side of resources, I think the response was just in one line to say, yes, resources are there. If not, we'll deal it in a different way. The reason of the question is that you need to understand what will be the plan B in details if we fall out of this. How will we handle it? But I think I'm covered, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Phiri. Just before I ask the SG to respond briefly, and then the DM can also do the same to respond to the issues. Perhaps just to indicate as you do so, especially the issues raised by both Honorable Phiri and Honorable Manyi. Firstly, that you indicated, SG, that my understanding was that you said the changes around these issues of Black Africans and the way you've done it, you seem to be saying it's not in the remit of the Stats, that is Stats South Africa, and maybe what might be important is that for this committee as a new committee, that you might have to, in another session, when we, as part of our program, we bring those difficulties and issues. We discuss and take up the matters ourselves, because decision-making on those issues would not be on the minister nor the statistician general. It would be our space to determine some of those issues. I think you have indicated that point. Maybe you also need to elaborate, both yourself and the DM. You seem to have been saying, if I had you correct, that whilst you would have 5 years or 10 years, you have what you call intermediaries, that in between there are certain processes that assist and allow you to achieve what you need to achieve within that period before the next milestone, whether it is 10 years or 5 years. Maybe further elaboration on that might be of help. I would make the further remarks later on as we summarize, but for now, maybe just for you to quickly tackle those issues, and then the DM.
Thank you, Chairperson. Let me mention that we're taking quite seriously the matters that are being raised here today. Let me start with the issue of the 5 years and 10 years. It's that there is enough data. Planning has been ongoing between 2011 and now, even before census results for 2022 come out, because Stats SA has about 250 to 270 products. And indeed, on the population side, we have a lot of products that we can make available. I don't want us to underestimate, and Honorable Manyi has a point, a critical point on the issue of the census, the richness of the census, and how it also helps us as Stats SA to do our sample surveys to get what we call a sampling frame. So it also helps us internally. But previous experiences have shown us that no matter how much we want to do, including the census, if National Treasury says they don't have money, there is nothing we can do as Stats SA, and it has happened. We as a country are tracking unemployment, poverty, and inequality. The income and expenditure survey, which helps us track poverty, a very important aspect of the life of our nation, was last conducted in 2013, 2014. We didn't have money until, so the last poverty numbers that we are using, that's why everywhere I present, I said poverty, manimetric poverty, as of 2015, because we have no other point that we have collected. It's because when there's no money, there is not much we can do. The one thing that obviously, if we were to be safe and put it on 10 years, when in the future a need occurs, the statistician general can ensure that a census is conducted any other time, because that's within the remit of the statistician general. But when we tie ourselves to 5 years, and in the last 20 years, we haven't been able to do so, and experience is telling us, and there is data that we are providing for planning, it's gonna be very difficult for us to implement the law as that's saying. But certainly the point is that we will make the data available other than the census that will help us. On the issue of population group, exactly as emotive as Honorable Mani puts it, that he is not a Black African. This is how other people out there are putting it in the society. They are telling us they are not Black. They are telling us they are not African. They were called Black since 1913, and they don't want to see the word Black anywhere next to them. They are telling us they don't want to be called African because whites are not called Europeans. There are other people from the continent who say, I've always been called an African, so don't come and call me Black or anything. There are people who say they don't want to be called color. It's very emotive, Chairperson, and I can see in the way Honorable Mani was talking, it's an emotive issue. So what we do before the census, we go out on consultations, as that's saying, because we want a successful census. We do a lot, including behind the glass tests, where we talk to people, we ask them questions, and how emotive they respond on certain issues. This is not the only issue they raise, Chair. The issue of marital status is very sensitive when you ask people. The issue of income is very sensitive when you ask people. So we test these issues. And we also work with the GCIS on communication, where Status Say only deals with matters of measurement. We talk to members of the public, and then they tell us how they would like to see themselves being enumerated on sensitive questions. So I know it's difficult, Chairperson, that I'm sitting here in Parliament and parliamentarians are telling the Statistician General, go and change that and make it this. If I go and change by being told by Parliament and I go and change it, I will have lost the independence. So the Statistician General will always be independent, whether it's a minister or the president or Parliament that says to SG, go and do this. I will do it in line with international best practice, including on matters that are emotional and emotive. While I plead that on the matter of the population group, let there be engagements, because it's very sensitive even for us out there, in as much as emotive we have seen it coming out today. Chairperson, Honorable Phiri has raised the issue again in terms of the fact that we need to continue to deal with the issue of resources. I think in our regular reporting to the Portfolio Committee, we will continue to engage on this matter and what we will tweak going forward, because this committee still have to approve our work program early next year. We still have to come back and report on what we have achieved. But having said so, since it's our first appearance, Chairperson, I don't want the Statistician General to be seen as this disrespectful Statistician General. It's done with all humility and all respect. It's just that you have given me a law to implement as parliamentarians, and I must implement it. And I don't want us to start on a bad footing. Many members of the committee have met us somewhere else, and we have engaged deeply on some of the issues. So we'll come back and share our work program and share the work that we do, including our products. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, DM.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson. I think the Statistician General, closes it quite succinctly with its discussion on the nomenclature of the population groups. I think we must agree that it should be an ongoing discussion. It's a matter of grave concern, as is alluded. It's an emotive issue, and I would suggest that we must agree that we value all the inputs and the views expressed by members, and that we will take this matter on advisement. And perhaps in future, this discussion will continue to ensue. I wanted to say, Chair, that we have really identified weaknesses in the Act, and that is why these amendments are quite cardinal. Having said that, and let me speak to census alone. We said that one of the considerations would be the cost implications of conducting a census. We said it's just one. But we also said that the reason we are amending or recommending the amendment of this Act is it also informed by best international practice. I mean, if you look at the most advanced countries in the world, Germany, the US, including China, the most populous country in the world, have their census conducted every 10 years. And I'm sure the planning for China is burdensome, but their census is conducted every 10 years. So those are some of the considerations. These community surveys are important because, you know, they provide population and household statistics at the municipal level, and they help to support planning, Chair, and decision making, because statistical data do exactly that. They must be able to aid how government plans, but more critically, sound decision making must be based on data which cannot be disputed. Honorable Pillay makes an important observation that the process of the completion of the bill is paramount, and therefore it must happen within this current administration. I couldn't agree more. But as you know, Chair, the process now is in your hands. This process will be followed by a public participation process, which will have to ensue immediately after this engagement. And so it is really in your hands as a committee to now see through the completion of the process. I'm also quite content with how the SG has responded to the post enumeration survey, because it's quite important if you want to guarantee quality of the numbers. The fact that you also don't want to have people counted twice or others unaccounted for. So I think that is important. Finally, Chair, I really wish to concur with the SG that maybe we need to have a session where State SA is going to detail its products. There are 250 or so reports, a minimum of 230 annually produced by State SA. So that they must really help guide us as we continue to engage with the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable DM. Maybe just to make the following points, colleagues. This is a new committee. It's not been there before. This is a planning, monitoring, and evaluation portfolio committee. It's new. What you had before was DPSA, where State South Africa was an additional task, a by the way thing. You've got to deal with us. I'm aware that Honorable Bell and others would have been in that committee. And so in the way we're going to operate, it's not going to be like we've met before, we've said this, we're starting a process with this new committee, and Stats SA is a critical component of that, as is the National Planning Commission, as are the other departments that this committee is going to oversee, where they account to. And so I think that's going to be important. We had planned a strat plan, time and the issues like this matter would not have allowed us to. And last week, Friday, the 15th, that was, and we even tried to break it down. We're still trying to work on that, because what we want to do is for us to make sure that everybody else that accounts to us, we unpack those kind of issues. And so the need for Stats SA to come back and fully present who they are and what they do is still going to be part of our program, including, for that matter, SG and DM. That on the 10th of October, as you release this, we're not going to be spectators and watch you on TV. As part of our program, we're going to programatize, even if it's the next day or whenever, when you come to this committee and present that report to us as a portfolio committee. In the same way that we're going to have a program with you, that when you do these quarterly interactions and reports, the portfolio committee is not going to read it in newspapers. We're going to have a program that allows you to come and account to this committee. It's one thing to have an operational independence, which we understand. It's critical in terms of the information and so on. It's a completely different matter that as Stats SA, you account to us. And because there is never going to be a space where you don't account to us because of some independence. You account to us. And so we're going to have to make sure that we balance the understanding of those issues from where I'm sitting. But we're going to have that kind of program. And I don't know whether Stats SA does their annual reports, because the two critical tasks that we're going to do now is what we're doing now, and we're going to be engaging in these BRRR processes and so on. And we're going to have our program developed in that regard. And maybe Julius, Mr. Ngwepe, because from today, the parliamentary processes are going to kick in relation to the process of the bill as it is normally done in Parliament. And maybe, Mr. Ngwepe, if you want to explain from now how we just going to briefly the journey of the bill. I see Honorable Manya, I'll come back to you. I see your hand. Mr. Ngwepe, very briefly, if you want to, because from today we're going to have to programatize and then say, now that the bill has been introduced in Parliament, we are a Parliament of the people. In terms of Section 59, people must have access, must have involvement with the work that we do, and hence we're going to embark on issues of public hearing in that regard, because unlike the executive or even the judiciary, we don't have a luxury of not being transparent in the kind of work that we do as this arm of the state. If you could briefly just explain from today the next steps, Mr. Ngwepe.
Good morning, Chairperson, and good morning, honorable members and honorable Deputy Minister. Yeah, Chair, we have got a program that we have drafted. We are still going to share the program with the members of the committee, and we have got an advert that is almost ready, but we were still waiting for what the SG has alluded on his last slide with regards to the certification from the state law advisors. So once those has been completed, then the Parliament will then give us a go-ahead as a committee. We do have an ATC, but that ATC was just for the committee to note that there is this particular legislation that is before that is coming to Parliament, but it's just for members to know. Like today's session is for members just to for the Stats SA just to introduce the bill. But we are ready, Chair. The next quarter, meaning from after the BRRR, the committee will be ceased to deal with the legislation, and we are anticipating that if everything goes well, then by end of November, when Parliament rises in December, we would have concluded in terms of the committee processes with regard to the processing of the bill. So in a nutshell, that's it. That is it, Chairperson. But then the members of the committee will then be share the program and the advert as well. I think maybe during the recess, and then we'll also be liaising with the bills office in Parliament. That will then guide us with regard to how should we go forward in terms of processing the bill. But the next quarter, Chairperson and honorable members, is the most of our time will be processing this particular bill. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope that assists with the members, as also as raised by Honorable Pillay. Honorable Manyi, very briefly before I summarize and close. You had
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I must thank you, Chair, for tearing up also this issue of independence. That I think it must be understood in its proper context. Parliament, you have a lot of other Chapter 9 institutions that have got statutory independence, but they still account here. As it were. We also approve your budget, SG, as this Parliament. So please understand this thing of independence. That doesn't mean that you can be a dictator and do as you please. Parliament makes the laws. And Chairperson, I just want to make this point very clear as my parting shot, that I'm not asking the SG to do what Manyi wants. I'm asking the SG to follow the law. And I am saying the issue of black is been passed by this Parliament. When we're asking him, what we're asking him to do is to ask him to implement the laws that have been passed by this Parliament. He can't decide that this in here Parliament, your black, meaning African, colored, and Indians, is giving me problems, and therefore I am using my discretion as an SG to use Black African. The Black African is an unlawful classification, as it were. The Office of the Statistician General has got no legal authority to overrule Parliament. You can't. So, Chairperson, I can't stress this much. So I'm not even emotional about this thing. I'm just being constitutional about it, to say that what the SG must perhaps do is to propose an amendment in the Employment Equity Act, on all other primary legislation where this is defined, and then it can be changed there. But for you to just sitting in your office in Pretoria to make a call on it based on some anecdotal interactions we've had with various committees is wrong, plainly wrong, Chairperson. So I just want to leave it at that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Manyi. Yes, I did indicate that that issue, sensitive as it is, the decision making would not be at the level of the State South Africa or even the minister. So where there are difficulties, as part of our program, we're going to give space to the SG and Stats SA. For them to say, here is the dilemma that we have, as he was taking us through that journey of the dilemma of delegations interacting with them, and they were interacting with the wrong address in a sense. And so we want the SG to bring those matters to our attention, so that we also play our role in terms of clarifying whatever matters that are not clear in that regard as the oversight body of this National Assembly. And so, colleagues, as Mr. Mwepo was saying, we're working on a full program of this committee that will take into account a number of things as the new committee, even without going to the strat plan. There are certain things that we're going to have to do. We're going to share that program. As he has indicated, the next priority of Parliament or National Assembly after we come back from recess is going to be a focus on the annual reports. So we have no option. That's not optional for us to do or not do. We're going to do that. And we're going to have to allow for the process of the bill itself, public hearings, and for it to come back to this committee for finality before it goes to the National Assembly. That the program is also going to detail those kind of issues. In between, I think we're going to be parking and see how we plan the issue of finding time with Stats SA. You now have a proper home in the form of this planning, monitoring, and evaluation committee. But Stats SA is an important tool for the country. You were a stepchild where you were before, because there were other matters that committee was focusing on. And so we're going to be looking into that and having that as our priority as this committee. Thank you very much, colleagues. The time now is 15 minutes to 10. Ms. Moy, are we done with our agenda items before we close the meeting?
We're done, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, colleagues. The meeting is therefore adjourned. Thank you.
Many thanks, Chairperson. Many thanks.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.